Hello friends, welcome back to the It's a Guitar YouTube channel. I've got a killer amplifier in today that I just picked up. I'm so excited. I've been looking for one of these for a long time. I've spoken about them on the channel quite a bit, so I'm very, very excited. In addition, this week I also happened to get a cabinet, which is going to pair perfectly with this thing. Did not plan for this. Both just kind of fell into my lap this week, so super excited. Without further ado, let's check them out. The video is not really going to be about the cabinet here, but it is worth mentioning. Brighten up a little bit here. The cab is a early 80s, I think it's an 81 or 82 JCM 800 cabinet. It looks like a very generic Marshall cab you've seen a million times, but it is a little special because it has the G1265 speakers in it, which if you know, you know. Really pretty sought after speakers. You know, most of these cabinets had, or the later JCM 800 cabinets had the T75 speakers, which are not bad speakers, but they just, you know, aren't everybody's cup of tea. So really excited by this. And I bought this cab mainly to be able to gig my 100 watt JMP and not worry about blowing up the original cabinet with the Pulsonic cone Celestians. So that was awesome. That's a Guitar Center purchase. Kind of a funny story behind that. Really quick, it was listed as a 300 watt cabinet, but they had a photo of the back plate which said 260 watts. So it was priced much lower than it probably should have been. Came with the casters too, which I've been looking for those casters. They're the special OMA style. Anyways, I digress. Let's get to the amplifier. Check this thing out. My goodness. In my opinion, this is the best Marshall aesthetic they ever did. I freaking love the late 70s JMPs. I just think, especially the kind of piping right on the bottom there, they just look so sharp from every angle, just really well outlined. And they've got the kind of thicker, I don't know, elephant skin style Tolex, which is a little bit different. You can see actually here, this is my 72 JMP. You can see it's got kind of a different grain pattern to it. This is more exaggerated, if you will. Gosh, it looks so good. So this was definitely a player. And I'll get more into the story of the amplifier on the workbench. We'll check it out. But yeah, I just wanted to show the exterior real quick. So let's get on the workbench and see what we got. On the workbench, it looks just as good, if not better. I don't know how that's possible, but I am just enamored with the aesthetic of this amplifier. Now let's compare real quick to my JMP from 72. So obviously a lot of differences with the cabinet, obviously 4 input there, and the extra polarity switch on the end, because this was a 2-prong at one point. And I love this amp. This thing sounds great. I've done a whole series on this. I actually bought it from the original owner. Took a lot of work to get it running. I've gigged it, filmed all of that. I'll put a link in the description for that series. I plan to do a similar series with this amplifier. So again, this is a 1979. It's a 2-input 2203. This is a 1959. Well, actually, this started as a super bass. It was converted to super lead. But this is the 2203 circuit, which is a bit different. Obviously got a master volume, 2-input, just high and low. And we can see kind of one of the first defects here. It is missing the cap for this knob, but no big deal. I actually think I have an original pointer knob. See, they've got a little point to them in my stash, so no big deal there. Serial number. So we can get up on that a little bit. Looks like 04487L. I don't know how to read those yet, but I'll figure it out. Let's go ahead and flip it around. And here's the back. I do have the back plate, just obviously removed so we can see what we're dealing with here. Kind of go through the side here. It does have a factory 3-prong, which is nice. You'll notice a lot of tape residue here. The owner told me that he would tape this in place, and you can see it's covered in tape residue as well, so that it wouldn't pop out, because it did pop out once at a gig or before a gig when they were getting set up, and they had to, you know, use the old little brass wire or something to make the jumper to the correct impedance output. So hopefully we can get some of that off. We'll have to play with that. And we do see it's got the original, all of the original caps in it still. So we'll be checking those out. 4 speaker outputs, which I think I read somewhere that is kind of a USA export thing. I'm not 100% sure on that, but kind of interesting. Obviously, this is 100 watts. We got 4 EL34s in it, 3 preamp tubes. Looks like a 20/6/79. So June 20th, 1979. One thing to note too is this is very clean as far as modifications are concerned. There's no holes in it or anything like you see with a lot of vintage Marshalls, which I was specifically looking for. I was trying to find one that didn't have any additional holes covering up all this stuff like my other JMP has. So let's go ahead and pull it out and see what we're working with. All right, let's check out this bad girl. See what we're working with here. We'll start on this end and make our way down. So again, we can see June 20th, 1979, signed by this person, signed by this person, signed by this person. USA, looks like it's C800 here, whatever that means. And then 100 watt master volume. Pretty straightforward there. Let's go ahead and move on down the way. No idea what tubes are in it. Yep, so all three are some kind of generic no-name preamp tube. Not what you really want to see. First up, we've got the choke here. Has a date code on the side of 279. And then we can see it is a Drake transformer, T100. That looks good to me. We've got the output transformer here. I'll try and bend it over a little bit without breaking anything. Just make it out there, exactly what you would expect to see. Moving on further down the line, take a look at what the power tubes are. Looks like a matched quad. Sovtech EL34C, looks like. Now let's talk about the power transformer, which is the elephant in the room with this amplifier. And I'm having deja vu, guys. I don't know about you. If you've watched my other amplifier series, you'll know I've got a history of buying vintage amps that turn out to have replaced power transformers. This one is no exception, or at least it's got something going on with the power transformer. We'll have to uncover the story of that a little bit as we go along. But long story short, my JMP, my 100 watt JMP I bought from the original owner. Again, check that series out. I'll have it linked in the description. I purchased that amplifier without having taken the chassis out because the owner would not let me take it out. He said he was going to charge me more money if I took it out. Now from the back, looking at it in the cabinet, it looked all original and totally fine. So I just, moved forward, didn't think much of it. And when we got it home and, opened it up and everything, we uncovered that the power transformer had been replaced. Now, thankfully, it was a diagonal Marshall replacement, but it just was not, quote unquote, the one that would have had originally. So sucks, but not the end of the world. It produced voltages that are totally fine in the amplifier. The amp sounds great, as you guys have heard. Similar story going on here. So the owner of this amplifier told me it was all original. And from the back, when you're looking at it in the cabinet, all you see is this side. You could not see that this screw, was hanging out. It was basically hidden by the tube and just the bell cover. So from the back, it looked perfectly fine. Didn't think anything of it. Pulled the chassis out, flipped it over to see inside the circuit, and that's where I started to notice some things. And I'll point that out in a second. But first, I just wanted to sit on this for a second. So DET4145D. This is the code for the power transformer. DET diagonal, which is correct. That's what these would have. 4145D is not the typical power transformer these would have. In my very brief research, it appears that they did use 4145Ds with 2203s at some point in some capacity. So not totally discouraging, but obviously with this here, something was going on with the power transformer. This was clearly replaced. It's very odd stuff. Now, this has a sticker here, which I couldn't really make out when I was with the owner. And here we see Steve Bell, and it looks like some kind of code or something. So this might tell us that this is a power transformer that is not a diagonal and it's just got the original, or maybe not even original, but it's got bell covers on it here that might be kind of what you'd expect. I don't know. We're gonna have to look these codes up and see if there's anything there. In fact, I'll zoom in a little bit further so you can get a better view of it. I did end up getting a little bit off on this amplifier because of this. It did take some back and forth with the owner to get there. So it's a gamble. I took another gamble. I'm hoping it won't hurt me too bad later on, but just want to call that out. Something going on here. So let's flip it over and investigate further. All right, let's see what we're working with here. I guess we'll start with the power transformer side. See what we got. So first glance, you know, obviously stuff has been messed with here. What you would normally see on a factory amplifier is these blue pieces of, like, I guess it would be heat shrink or whatever it is, some kind of rubber, where they're holding all the wires together. So you've got a ton of wires coming off the power transformer for all the different voltages, and you got to feed all the different parts of the amplifier and the bias, etc. And yeah, very clearly not there. And instead, you've got these little zip ties. So that's the first clue. That's what actually clued me into thinking, oh, what's going on here? Again, not the end of the world per se. This could be a totally, you know, factory transformer that was just replaced. So a couple of different options here that are going through my head. You know, the owner said he didn't have that replaced. He's had it since he was 13 years old, going way back. He bought in 82, I think, or something like that. 81, 82, somewhere in there. And this is 1979 amp. So he bought it, you know, very lightly used, basically. But perhaps, you know, the guy before him blew up the power transformer, took it to the repair shop, and they, you know, swapped in a different diagonal. Obviously, they didn't take, you know, the care of the Marshall factory, and they didn't have, you know, these little bits to make it look original. They just did zip ties and called it good to go. You know, function over form. Nobody's looking inside these amps at that time. So that's one possibility. With all of that, everything else is looking pretty good here. Interestingly enough, all of the caps look fine. There's no sign of bubbling that I can see on any of them from my angle here. So that's pretty cool to see. And I did fire the amp up and confirm it did have output, and it sounded pretty quiet overall. I was pretty impressed, to be honest. So that's good. Now, I don't know basically anything about this era Marshall and what's to be expected, original or not. You know, these resistors here, these screen resistors, I don't know if those are original or not. They're certainly not the same as the ones in the earlier amps, the green style ones. So not sure, but that's no big deal. It is interesting to see the grid stop resistors kind of, I don't know if you can see this, kind of floating here. They got one for each tube socket, whereas the earlier ones had a different value that was shared between. And everything else looks pretty good all in this area. I don't really see anything that's jumping out to me as scary. The output transformer, that's going to be these wires all here. Now, one interesting thing to note is that this era Marshall, they did not use the red paint on all of the solder connections to, you know, show the factory connections or if it's been messed with. So my 72 had that. It's very clear to see where it's been touched. This, it's less clear, just shiny solder everywhere. So just want to call that out. But yeah, looks like the original giant Pyre resistors here. Got a mustard cap, which is kind of cool to see off the presence control. And yeah, definitely some different stuff going on versus the 1959 circuit. I don't have a schematic in front of me. We'll pull that out as we go along. But we're just doing a first visual check. And then moving on down the line, jacks look fine. Diodes, you got a little bit of a mixture of Pyre and Iskras, just like my 72. We do see a little resistor here. This will be a 4747K resistor tacked on top of another resistor down here, which is what another 47K. That definitely looks like that was done later. So I'm assuming based off where it is in the circuit, probably something to do with the bias, just to get maybe the bias range better set. Now, there was one theory, a friend I was talking to about this amplifier and the power transformer potentially being part of the kind of, well, you know, the USA models would have the 6550 tubes. I don't know a ton of the history of that, but there's, I guess, a potential chance that this power transformer, which is not the typical, might have been swapped for that. And if you're doing a swap to 6550s, typically you would change the bias as well. So very, very small chance that's the case, but just want to point that out. But nothing looks touched anywhere in here other than this. This over here, all of this looks original to me. Everything looks good. This is interesting. I don't know if this is original or not. And then really fascinating to see this whole setup. with this resistor and cap. Another bright cap, it looks like 0.001. This is a 500M. Looks like they got codes on the side of them. To be honest, hard to tell. I can't see. Normally, like a CTS pod or something, you'll have a code on the top that I can read. And the codes seem to be going off to the back side here. Very interesting. They've got these kind of wings on them. I've never seen that before, but again, I don't know much about this era. And they look old to me, but are they original? I'm going to guess yes, because they're all the same. Usually if you got a replaced pot, you have just one replacement, not the whole set. But yeah, overall, guys, I think it looks very good. I'm really excited by this. We got some stuff to figure out what's new, right? That always happens to me. But otherwise, I think a pretty good spot. Moving this resistor, I can see the lead poking through. It's kind of loose and the solder joint is not holding it in place. So we'll have to go through and touch up all that stuff. But that's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. All right, killer. Now, I think what we'll go ahead and do is fire it up and confirm we've got sound output and see if anything pops out as being way wrong, and we'll start taking some measurements on the voltages. Got the amplifier hooked up to the aux box right now. We got the bias meter over here so we can see the plate voltage and what this tube is biased at. And I'm not going to bring it up on a current limiter because I've already turned it on and confirmed it works and it seemed totally fine. So no catastrophic issues I got to worry about there, and that way we can get real voltages. We got it plugged into the Variac though directly to get 120 volts. So we have that kind of normalized. And then we've got our nice handy dandy little multimeter here. So let's go ahead and turn it on, let it warm up on standby, and then see what we're getting. All right, flipping standby off. Should be seeing voltages over there. Looks like 442.22. That seems very low to me. Let's go ahead and check that. Yeah, so it's biased quite cool. 39%. So we should be able to warm that up a decent amount. Looks like we should be targeting closer to probably 35 or so. Let's see what we get here. In fact, let's see what negative voltage we're getting. Negative 39. Well, rather annoyingly, there are no voltages shown on the schematic here. At least none that I can see. So, okay, no worries. Let's go ahead and see what happens. All right, that should be pretty good. Looks like 435, 436, 38. Let's see what that is. 436, 38, 66%, which is basically right on the money for fairly safe, and that gives us a little bit of headroom. You know, we're at 120 volts from the wall right now, so if we were to go up, you know, in a different venue or something where we got hotter voltages, we have some safety in there. Cool. That all looks good to me. See what the screens are running. 430. Should all be the same. From here, I think we just plug in a guitar and hear how it sounds. So obviously there needs to be some work done still. You know, there's going to be some solder joints we got to touch up and clean up all this mess. But so far, so good. We just got to make sure it's got a decent output. All right, there you go. I think we're done here. Looking real quick, see if I missed anything. But we got everything all zip tied, nice and clean. We redid the ground connections there. Redid that ground connection. Redid the heater connection here. I just realized I didn't do this one, so we'll have to redo this one here. That's no big deal. And then redid this connection and redid the connections here. Now this is the factory 3-prong, and I just kept it wired how it was from the factory. I know there's other ways to do it, but I'm just going to keep it the same as factory. And yeah, everything looks good. We did also move the 120 volt from over here over to here with the other 3. I saw a bunch of photos online of different original ones and how they were wired, and it seemed like it was all over the map how they had it set up. So I just decided to do it this way and shorten this lead. So yeah, overall, very happy. It looks much, much nicer than it did before. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and redo this connection right here for the other heater and call it good. Alrighty guys, so I got a chance to play the amp some more and just really get a feel for it through the aux box, and it's sounding very, very good. I am incredibly happy. And also through the cabinet, that 65 loaded cabinet, it's sounding amazing. And immediately what jumps out to me versus my 1972 JMP is just how much more versatile this thing appears to be. The master works actually really well. In my opinion, the preamp gain is super helpful. The EQ seems to have more control, and it's much, much less harsh lower settings than the my converted super lead. So it's interesting. I did do a little comparison of playing this and then plugging into the 1972 JMP with the channels jumper and just kind of seeing how they differ. Immediate, thoughts through a cab in person. This amp is much more usable outside of like pretty extreme settings. Through the aux box, which really rounds things off, and I have it kind of set to be a bit of a darker cab. The 72 just really has a lot of extra bite to it, which sounds very, very cool. So yeah, and just a very early initial takeaways. We still got to play with them a little bit. I will say I am debating on going back and converting my 72 JMP back to its original spec, which was a super bass, and leaving this to be the lead spec. I am thinking about that. So there may be more on that in the future. I got to play that Park. You guys saw that Park super bass that I fixed for a friend that had that really hot bias, and that thing sounded incredible. The super bass circuit is just a great sounding circuit. I was so impressed by it, and it made me really strongly think about converting mine back. And now that I've got this, which can kind of do similar duties, I'm strongly considering that. So more to come. Let me know what you think in the comments. Just to kind of also buttoning up some other little pieces before we put it back in the head cab. I will order parts. I don't have the right caps for this, or order this. And then this is two 47Ks in parallel, which gives you 23K or whatever. And I think we'll just probably end up replacing this resistor while we're in doing these two with a 23K just to get that out of the way. Otherwise, I think I'm going to leave everything else on the board as is. Nothing jumps out. I did measure everything, and all the resistors measure pretty close. One interesting thing here, I've already discharged the amp, by the way, so I know some people get upset at me using that. I'll use a plastic one for those folks. The gray leaks right here, normally 220K. On schematic, I believe they're 220K, except for when it's a 6550 loaded amp, and this is USA model, so I believe this would have been 6550s. So these are 150Ks. I don't, to be honest, really know the difference of what that's going to do to the tone. I can't imagine it's a big difference here. Should be fine, but if I look up and see that this is some major thing, then maybe we'll swap those, but probably just going to leave that, to be honest. And then I also looked up this because I was a bit confused. It looks factory to me, but it's also a little odd. So basically what you have is you've got the input, you got the resistor right here, the 68K, and then it's running, and it's a telescoped coax cable. So you can see that the shield of it is not connected on this end. The shield is actually connected to the blue wire pin right here, which is the plate. So the shield is hot. It's running the plate, which is, a couple hundred volts or whatever it is, 150 volts. So that's very weird. Normally you would expect it to go to ground. I guess this is a Marshall thing they did from the factory for a period of time. I don't know. It's new to me. Don't have any real experience on that. I don't really understand why you would want to do that and what advantages that would kind of give you, but I'm just going to leave it for now because it doesn't seem to be hurting anything, and the amp came like that from the factory as far as I can tell. So that's that. And then this cap right here that was added, which is it's a 220 picofarad cap that's piggybacking off of this plate resistor, this 100K. Again, I don't really know what's going on here. I didn't think I saw this on the schematic. I'll have to look again, but it looks like this might have been added later. Maybe it was a factory thing. I don't know enough about these amps, to be honest, to be able to say. I got to do more research. So let me know in the comments what you think of that and if I should remove that or keep it. But otherwise, everything looks really good. I'm really stoked. What I'm trying to do is not get, not just pick this thing apart so that it's, on the workbench forever. I'm not actually able to enjoy it. That can happen. For example, I'm just going to go out and say that the factory 3-prong, is not wired perfectly, right? The ground connection, for example, is very short. It's the same length as the hot and the neutral. Well, actually, the hot is much longer if you count the splice, which goes all the way over to here. It was done that way from the factory. I'm not going to mess with it. I might eventually swap the 3-prong with a more heavy-duty one because it is a little janky, but it works completely fine, and it's just not a big priority for me right now because I want to be able to enjoy this thing versus, again, have it sit off to the side forever. So just want to point those things out. Overall, very, very stoked. This came out great, too. I'm really happy with the look of the power transformer leads there. Still got to clean it out a little bit. I did also take a little bit of time and try and clean up all of this. Let me brighten it up a little bit. Realize you guys can't quite see. The hard thing with these amps is they're just so reflective. So this had a ton of tape residue, duct tape residue, because the previous owner would tape this in place so he didn't lose it, which is understandable because if you lose that, you're kind of in trouble. So I was able to get most of it off. So it's just a little bit of remnant left, and I couldn't really get the rest off. Just, I think it looks much better, so we'll stick there. Same thing with this. I spent a good amount of time getting the crap off of this, and then I also bent the pins, so you can see it's quite hard to remove it now. I went in, cleaned them, and then I used a little poker sharp point, this little guy, to bend the pins so that they grip onto these tighter. So that makes it much, much better. So now you have to physically press pretty hard to get it in there, and it lifts up a little on this thing because there's nothing holding it on that side, but I can't pull it out without being very forceful. So happy about that. These were also a bit loose, so I tightened these up. The fuses, I didn't show that on camera, but I replaced one of the fuses. And then the only other thing I wanted to point out, oh, it's too bright. Just this dang reflection. Yeah. Anyways, the other thing I wanted to point it out, I'll kind of lean it over like this, is the knob. So this one had one knob that was missing the cap on, and the guy said it's been like that since he got in 82 or whatever. So I happen to have some spare pointer knobs, which is what this has. These are pretty uncommon, and it's wild to me that nobody makes repros. At least I haven't seen any repros that are decent looking, especially the plexi circuit. The knobs on my super lead, my 72 JMP, look very different than all of the modern Marshalls I've seen. So I have 2 replacement knobs on there, and I got it from a really nice gentleman who gave me kind of a little stash of these knobs. And I just want to point out, kind of interesting, these are both pointer knobs. They look basically identical. You can see that. But if you look at them carefully, the tops are slightly different. This is wider, and this has got a chamfered edge. I don't know if you can see that or not, how they differ. So all of the factory knobs on this amp has the chamfered edge, so I happen to have an exact match to go on there. So that works out perfectly. So we're going to go ahead and throw this on the presence, and then that would kind of complete the set, so to speak. And then this will go back on the 72, which the other knob, which is also a replacement, is more this flat style. So actually worked out perfectly. We'll get this tightened on and buttoned up, put it in the head shell, and enjoy the crap out of it. I'm so excited. This thing sounds so good already. And down the line, we'll do more to this for sure. We'll swap all the caps and do all that stuff, but I'm not stressing about that right now, to be honest. I just want to enjoy the amp, and it works, so we'll take it. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this little series, this little video, and let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time, see ya.